Good evening and welcome to tonight's training session on the newest addition to the Sony family, the ZV-1 camera. Hello, my name is Nick Rowe. I am one of the National Digital Imaging Product Specialists here at Sony, and joining me tonight is Heath. Good evening, Heath.
G'day, mate. How are you?
Yeah, very good. And yourself?
I am very well. Thank you very much.
That is good. Well, tonight we are talking about the ZV-1, the newest addition, as I said, to the Sony family for its lineup of compact cameras. So I think there's any better place to start, really, than Heath. Well, what is the ZV-1? What is this camera?
Okay, so the ZV-1 is Sony's newest compact camera. It features a 2.7 times optical zoom, which is 24-70 full frame equivalent lens, 4K HDR video recording, and all that comes from the 1-inch sensor. Spot on.
That's exactly it. So it does have our Exmor RS stacked sensor inside, so the same 1-inch sensor that you'll find in the RX100 Mark 7 as well. So really strong low light performance and really fantastic readout speeds. So we know that the thing that's powering this camera is incredibly powerful and very, very fast. I should have mentioned at the top, if you do have any questions or anything like that, please do pop them in the comments for us. We do love to stay in touch and answer any questions you may have. So if you think of anything, certainly let us know. And Chris Nixon, thanks for jumping on straight away. So who been seeing a lot of positive reviews on this. Love the product focus mode. Chris will definitely dive into that, and we'll have a closer look at the product focus mode or the product showcase mode, and we'll just see what that's all about. So Heath, when we're talking the ZV-1, who was this for? What's this camera? What's the audience?
The ZV-1's primary end user will be content creators, vloggers, and we have a bit of a saying here at Sony that this camera was created for creators. So anyone who would like to point the camera at themselves or something else to then show that footage to, and an audience of one to many is where the ZV was going to show its greatest strengths, really. So yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. And just to echo what you're saying there, Heath, yeah, the ZV-1 very much a vlogger-based camera, and we can see that with the vari-angle screen that now comes around to the side, something very new for us here at Sony. But yeah, having that is certainly a selfie or a vlogger, and certainly a camera which wouldn't be out of place with any other online content creators or even entry-level filmmakers. In the earlier session tonight, we were going through some of these video features that this camera can do, and it's no joke when it comes to that stuff. It can do some actually really high-level, high-production stuff.
Yeah, it has a lot of the features that the larger cameras do have, but it's all that's packed into a small form factor body.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and we'll get a chance to dive into a lot of that stuff tonight and just sort of unpack this camera a little bit more. But it certainly is more than perhaps what it's displayed out on the surface, which is just a straight up vlogging camera. We can see that it does do a lot more, and the stills capability for the camera is pretty darn good as well. And we'll get a chance to check that out. So how about we dive in and we'll just have a look at some of the operational functions and some of the things that was changed around with the camera. Now, if you haven't had a chance to see the ZV-1, this is what it looks like. And as we mentioned, there is a great deal of upgrades and cosmetic things that we've changed to really sort of bring this camera up and enhance it. So we'll just list through some of the biggest things we've done. And up here, the C1 custom button is our bokeh switch button. We'll dive into that function a little bit more later tonight, but a massive addition to this camera and really separates it from the pack for vloggers, online content creators, or for selfie use as well. The other thing is the product showcase mode down on the C2 button. That one there, again, we'll dive into what that function does a little bit later tonight. Vari-angle LCD screen. So as we mentioned, one of the first cameras we've done in the compact size where the LCD screen comes out to the side. We've done a bit of an overhaul when it comes to the inbuilt microphone inside the ZV-1. It is a directional 3-capsule mic, so picks up incredibly detailed audio from patterns that are predominantly in front of the camera. But in the box, it comes with an included windsock as well, which can cut out a lot of that harsh wind and nasty noise that comes through. We've made the record button larger and placed it on the top of the camera. And a big function for this is that way if you have the camera facing yourself for selfie or for vlogging, the record button is now the largest button on the camera, so you can't miss it when you want to press that record. We do also have a record bulb located at the front of the camera now. So if you do a fantastic take, you can always know that you are recording because that light will be on.
Yeah, that's also known as the tally light. If you ever have any customers asking if it has a tally light, and the answer is resoundingly yes, it has a tally light on the front and the back.
And it can make a big difference. If you think you've nailed a shot, or you're halfway through a take and something fantastically miraculous happens behind you, you can instantly see without having to turn the camera around and see if you're recording, the tally light will be lit. So a really big bonus. When it comes to inputs, it does have a microphone input as well as a micro HDMI input. Tucked in the middle here is a micro USB input. The MI hot shoe, multi-interface hot shoe, which works to a lot of the Sony accessories. A big advantage on this is a phantom power supply that will run through. And the last thing to highlight is the improved grip and comfort. So we have really put a bit of a focus on making sure it sits a bit more comfortably in your hand throughout use. So Heath, I mean, having a look at all of these, which one excites you the most with all these changes?
Well, I think obviously it's the bokeh switch button for me. Anytime you can push one button to achieve a completely blurred background on a compact camera is just amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, like it's putting this idea of what would traditionally be a pretty complex or a tricky photography concept to sort of get through, which is to play with your aperture and get your exposure right to have a blurred background. Well, now you just press a button. So
that's right. You're going to get the professional look without having to do all the professional work.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. Anything else?
Obviously, I think the windsock that goes in over the top of the mic on top. Yeah, that's obviously it slides into the MI hot shoe and then extends out over the top of the mic. Once you've actually seen this or heard this in use, the difference between with and without that windsock is just unbelievable. It takes what would normally be considered bad audio and turns it into perfect audio.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's a real shame tonight, unfortunately. We don't really have a great demonstration for the audio capture over streaming, but certainly when stock arrives to your stores, it's certainly something worth trying and get the camera out, just record a bit of audio and just have a listen back to it and play it back. It really makes a big difference.
And for anyone that's if you're trying to do a demo and it's not a windy day, just spin around.
Yeah,
and it works a treat.
Or just turn a fan on and just kind of blow a fan on. So I mean, as you can see, there's a huge range of upgraded features that we've really put into the ZV-1, and we can see that it really does help vloggers, online content creators, and filmmakers for sure. Yep. So the next thing we'll jump into is we'll have a look at the autofocus performance, and like many Sony cameras released in the last year or so, real-time tracking is also involved inside the ZV-1. So we'll just have a look at a short video, and this will be I'll do a bit of a running commentary on this as we watch it. So the ZV-1 is on the left-hand side, and just a conventional camera using contrast autofocus is on the right. And as we press play, the key thing we want to look at is the speed of the autofocus in the ZV-1 and its ability to transition from a subject in the foreground and then to give us a clean focus in the background. And that's really powered by real-time tracking. And a particular thing to note about the environment that this is in is that it is, I mean, there's plenty of lights in it, but it still would be considered as a low light. With this one, ZV-1 is on the left. We do have a competitor's model on the right. And the key thing to note with this is the speed the ZV-1 can transition between subjects as the camera is moving around, whereas our competitor is very slow to shift its focus. And in fact, some of the time is actually missing focus as well. When we're talking about vloggers and online content creators, I mean, getting focus right is crucial.
Yeah, this is like one of those real world sort of situations where I know not everyone's going to be filming some plastic deer in the backyard, but you're going to have people who are shooting in a fluid motion. Nobody wants to have to stop and wait for the camera to catch up, and that's where the ZV-1 with that fast autofocus it enables you to be able to shoot without having to think and worry about is it going to stay in focus or not, because it's just going to keep grabbing focus every time.
Yeah, and like you said, I think that's such a crucial thing. And when it comes to focus, I mean, you can lose the story if the focus isn't in the right place. And what you really need is to have a camera that can not only keep up with everything that you're trying to record and everything that you want in the frame and in the image, but we've got to make sure the best thing that we're showing is in focus.
That's right.
And you don't want to miss any crucial parts to the story. And, something like this, it's a simple demonstration, but really highlights a real practical use, which might be B-roll for some vloggers, online content creators. They just want to capture maybe a bit of extra footage to edit in to their episodes. So something like this is really common. I think being able to rely on the camera to perform and to give you that image.
And even just for for real world home users, people who aren't creating content for, say, YouTube or something like that, people who are just making home movies, and they want to be able to make sure when they're running around in the yard, keeping up with the kids or something like that, that, what they want to stay in focus is in focus. Absolutely.
Yeah, totally agree. And if anyone is a little bit unfamiliar with what real-time tracking is here with Sony, Heath does have a video coming out later this week. Is that right?
Yeah, so the Sony Alpha Insights series that I'm making with Mark Gaylor, this week's video, which will be released on Friday, will be about real-time tracking. So it'll give you a chance to sort of see the difference between real-time tracking and eye autofocus. And it's also going to, you'll hear from Mark as well about why he likes using the real-time tracking for photography as well.
Yeah, great. And if there is any content around real-time tracking that maybe you feel like you're missing out on, let your local Sony rep know, and they'll let us know, and we can put some package together and get some more content out there to really explain what real-time tracking is.
Yeah.
So the next thing I'd like to bring up is the ZV-1 does have a built-in ND filter. So I took a photo just earlier this afternoon. This was just taken in my backyard in really horrendous light. So this was maybe early afternoon. We can see that the settings around the shot were all much the same. It was a 70mm f2.8 ISO 400 and 1/160th of a second. The left image has the filter turned on, and the right image has that ND filter turned off. I mean, instantly you can see what a difference that ND filter does, right?
Yeah, and the whole point of the ND filter in that situation is so you can keep that wide aperture of f2.8. So
yes.
In this case, Nick's taken a photo of some plants, but if you were to replace those plants with a person, and you wanted to have that nice blurred background from the f2.8 aperture, you wouldn't be able to achieve that without the ND filter, because the person would be overexposed. You then have to increase your shutter speed, which maybe for artistic reasons you don't want to do, but it's the ND filter is there to be used as part of the whole suite, I guess, of options available to you. But I think that's a great way of showing, with these two images side by side, the power of the ND filter.
Yeah, I mean, it's so simple. And this photo was taken obviously in photo mode, but one of the strengths of this camera, as we know, is its video capability. And if you're shooting 24 or 25 frames per second, that shutter speed's probably going to go down to 1/50th, which is going to lead to more exposure. And as you were saying, if you want to keep, for artistic purposes, you want that nice shallow depth of field, the f2.8, you want to try to maintain that and keep that. So yeah, I mean, there's no way you'd be able to recover this image without an ND filter and have that down then as low as 1/50th of a second. So having that ND filter especially for video application, is a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just on that, it is not a variable ND filter; it is a fixed ND filter, and does about 3 steps. So when it's on, it does 3 steps filtration, and then when it's off, it looks something exactly like that. The camera actually also have an auto function as well, where if it creeps into too much overexposure, then the ND filter will switch on automatically. Yeah, fantastic. Well, we might move into a bit of a cloak into the bokeh switch button, and I have another short video, just to sort of get a bit of a look at what the bokeh switch button does. Now, we definitely wish the sunglasses
they had cleaned those glasses.
Apparently they were just cleaned beforehand. But yeah, we could see the shift then between when the bokeh was turned on, or when the button was off, and when the button is now turned on. And you can see that really distinct change in that background. We do have a frozen image coming up. I'll just pause this clip here. So we can really see a distinct difference between what we're seeing in the background when the bokeh button is turned off, or what we call is in clear mode, or when you have that bokeh button turned on. You can see there's this really nice kind of drop off in the background.
Yeah, I think the important thing there as well, Nick, is that you can still obviously make out what's in the background. It hasn't done what a lot of sort of smartphones do with their computational photography, where they just smear the background into non-existence. Where this is actually using a lens-based and aperture-based bokeh. So what it's doing is it's opening up the aperture of the lens as wide as it can go, and then actually putting in the ND filter to counteract that wider aperture, letting more light in, which then gives you the ability to have that nice blurred background, which is true bokeh. It's not not a faked software-based one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a big thing as well, like when we look at the software-based ones, is sometimes the images don't have much depth to them anymore, right? Like I've seen photos taken with like computational photography, and the bokeh has been added digitally, and you don't get a sense of depth in that image.
Well, no, you have a fine point where you have everything that's in focus, and then everything behind that line is out of focus, completely gone.
Yeah, that's right. So to your point earlier, I mean, this does look very natural in my opinion, and I think the big win on this, or the 3 ticks or the gold star, is that the application or the way to use this function is really simple, right? It's just a button. You just press a button, or you press a button and it's off. So I think that is huge. And when we are talking about smartphones and how people are growing accustomed to using smartphones and simply being able to just press a button on a smartphone and get a blurred background, well, now you get that in a 1-inch sensor camera, and really is making it very, very easy to achieve what is traditionally, artistically, maybe challenging thing to do. And in this situation they're using it to highlight a pair of sunglasses, but if you were to have the camera facing towards yourself or another person, you can really draw attention to what that person is talking about by only having that person as the main focal point. So for content creators who they're trying to tell a story, they're trying to talk about what's going on in their lives or something like that, then having that background blurred out is going to give them that sort of cinematic look. But also it's going to have the focus on themselves, which is the main point of the whole feature. Yeah, and I think you touched on something in there, which I think is really important. And it's like, you can also remove a distracting background, right? Maybe there's too much commotion, or there's too much happening in the background of your shot. You've got the camera pointing towards you in a selfie orientation. Well, now what you can do is press the bokeh button and essentially have any distracting action in the background fade into a blur, which means the focus is put back on you as a. I mean, that's a huge point. Yeah, I totally agree. All right, well then we might jump into the next big sort of hallmark feature, which is the product showcase mode. So we'll just have a quick watch of this short video, and what we have on the right-hand side, this is the ZV-1, and we have a competitor's camera on the left-hand side. And what we really want to pay attention to is how the ZV-1 can move from the product back to the presenter, back to the product again in a really fluid way. Whereas we can see our competitor's camera really struggles to shift between the product and back to the person. So much so that in this second video, we can see that our presenter, she has to put her hands up behind the product to obscure her face from the camera. So that way we can actually achieve focus on the product itself. So a massive function, I think this is, especially, I mean, there's obvious application when it comes to, product reviewers or those unboxing videos. And we can see with this one, it's a simple tabletop or a top-down view. And our competitor's model just really struggles to go focus from the table. And then when the hands come right up to the lens, it's just very slow, and there's quite a deal of focus hunting. Even there, we can see the focus ends on the hand and not on the actual thing we're trying to demonstrate.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, huge application in a lot of ways for a lot of people.
Yeah, and I think it's not just about people who are creating content for YouTube. It's also if you're doing like a holiday video or a video to show your friends or something like that. It might be just you want to show them something you've just purchased, or the food you're eating, whatever it might be when you're on holidays. Anything you want to hold up to the camera, you want it to snap into focus straight away, and that's what the product showcase is for, and that's what it excels at.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I mean, yes, the feature is called Product Showcase, but it's not just a feature for people who are doing product reviews or anything like that. You could be a travel vlogger, and maybe you're really motivated by the key to your apartment or something. Right? Yeah. But whatever it is, right? You are presenting to the camera, and you know that that the camera will shift between whatever the thing is that you are holding up, and then shift back to you when you want it to. It gives you much more control over that scene and that footage that you're recording.
Yeah, the only thing is you don't have the steady shot available.
That's right.
In product showcase mode, so it is designed more for people who do have the camera on a tripod or a stable surface of some sort as well.
Yeah,
or just a steady hand.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that point as well, the camera does have image stabilization. So the ZV-1 does have two forms of stabilization. It has both optical and electronic, which can provide some incredibly stable footage. And then it's got this third mode, which is called active mode. It's a bit of a beast mode for this. And what it's able to do is provide a small crop in on the image, but then provides much greater stabilization again.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, the stabilization in the ZV-1 is exceptional for sure. Once again, for anyone who is viewing, please feel free to put up any questions if you do have them in the comments tab, and Heath and I will jump on those and answer them for you. So we'll move into the next hallmark feature on this, and I do have another video. And we'll just want to have a look at the auto exposure. There was a lot of time and a lot of effort put in the ZV-1 to really help the transition between light environments and dark environments. So changing from indoors to outdoors and making sure that the exposure shifts seamlessly. So we do have this short video here, and we do have the ZV-1 in the middle with our competitors' cameras on the left and on the right. And we can see, and I'll just pause here for just a second. We can see as we're transitioning from that outside environment to the indoors that we're preserving a great deal of exposure on the face, which is crucial, right?
Yeah. I think one of the things that that's being shown here is this one has real, true life environmental sort of scenes. This is something that everyone who's ever held a camera up towards themselves or somebody else and done a walk and talk kind of situation. You're going to walk along the street, you're going to go underneath trees, you're going to walk in and out of buildings, and that's what part of the vlogging sort of culture is to sort of show that daily life. So to have the camera sort of keep your face exposed well throughout all those situations, that's a real game changer for what I think about this camera.
Yeah, absolutely. And traditionally is a massive challenge, like especially in video, to transition from a very brightly lit outdoor scene and seamlessly, whilst the camera is still recording, to move then indoors into a dark environment is traditionally really, really difficult to accomplish. And so if we just keep playing through, we can see as we move inside that once again, and I'll pause once more, we can really see how the ZV-1 holds up. And our competitor cameras just really struggle to get the exposure right, where the background is exposed and not the person. And like we said, for the content that we're recording, the people or the person comes first, and we need to make sure that they're lit right. So yeah, that seamless transition from outdoor to indoor is a massive feature, and it's accomplished just by a improved algorithm for the face priority auto exposure in the camera. So just improve that algorithm to make sure that we're tracking the face more accurately, and we're actually exposing to the face, not the environment. So that's how we're achieving that. So that this auto exposure mode does actually work in tandem as well with the natural skin tone update we've done, as well as the soft skin function. So we'll just have a quick look, and I'll bring up this slide I've got. I've left it on the last slide from the earlier training session, so I'll jump back up to the top. And we can see that, so this constant face brightness, this is what we were just looking at. This is the face priority and auto exposure. But the ZV-1 does have an improved natural skin tone and also a soft skin function. So again, when you're presenting to camera, when you've got video to camera, it's all about trying to make you shine in the best way possible. So if we have a look a little bit further into these, we can see, even by comparison to one of our own cameras, the RX100 Mark V, we can see the ZV-1 complexion is a lot smoother, and some of that redness starts to go away as well.
Yeah, that's part of that is about the updated sort of color science with this camera.
Yes.
So it has got a much better skin tones across all skin types. And as you can see on the slide just there, that the camera does ship with the soft skin effect on, and it's set to mid. So it's something that someone like myself could probably take use of, or maybe not. But you will get some people that may want to know how to turn that off, and it's just to go into the soft skin effect and just set it to off.
Yes. Yeah, there's been some reviewers out there who absolutely love this function, and then there's been some reviewers out there who would prefer to turn it off.
Yeah.
You actually raised something in there, Heath, which the ZV-1 does introduce, which is an improved color science. They spent a lot of time making sure greens, because traditionally greens have been a pretty tricky color to reproduce, and so they've spent a great deal of time working on the greens, and there's a lot of content out there now at the moment which really highlights that, especially when comparative to the RX100 Mark V side by side. You can really see the greens are a lot more punchier in the ZV-1. So yeah, that's a good point to mention. So if we take this skin tone and we throw that up against our competitors, and sorry, this is a little typo, that should be Model B on this one, and we got Model A on the right-hand side. So ZV-1 in the middle. And yeah, when we compare this to our competitors, I mean, once again, you can see the smoothness of complexion and removing any of that sort of unwanted redness, where our competitors, it kind of sticks there still and just can't quite get rid of it.
And that just really just gives people who are into vlogging and that kind of thing a chance to be sort of camera ready without having to go through all the makeup.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Yeah, 100%. So we're sort of drawing now toward the end of the ZV-1 training. So what we'll do here on is some quick fire stuff. We'll just let you know a bunch of the other little things that the ZV-1 can do. So of course, there is Imaging Edge, which is our mobile app that the ZV-1 can connect to. So when you transfer photos or videos from the ZV-1 to a smartphone, you can actually edit those videos within Imaging Edge and then upload straight to social media from there. So compatible with all of these, with the Imaging Edge, the ZV-1 is. When we look at some of these movie things, 4K HDR, hybrid log gamma or HDR, with S-Log2 and S-Log3. And we touched on it very briefly at the top of the show, Heath, but I mean, this packs some serious movie shooting.
These are all the sort of these are the same video features that you'll find in the A7R4. So you're going to get a whole bunch of really high-end video specifics compared to such a small camera body.
Absolutely. And like things for me, like having S-Log, S-Log2, S-Log3 built into a camera which fits in the palm of your hand. I mean, you could effectively color grade and color match this to an FS5 Mark II or an FS7. These entry cine cameras. This camera has the same color space or the same color gamut as what those ones can achieve. So for something that fits in the palm of your hand and you can color match and record 4K HDR to match it, I mean, it's truly powerful when it comes to these video functions.
Yeah, we do have a quick question, Nick, from Chris, who's quite controversial, I must say. Is the official pronunciation ZV-1 or ZV-1? And I'm going to say that it's region specific. And I'm going to stick with ZV-1, but I will not hold it against anybody for saying ZV-1.
I couldn't agree with you anymore. I think it's up to each and individual's preferred use case. As long as you hold the camera up and say it's this one, I think that's totally fine as well.
That's right.
So when we dive in and we look at some of these other movie shooting functions, again, super slow-mo, we actually have the high frame rate of up to 960 frames per second. So that's in PAL. In NTSC, you can get that up to 1,000 frames per second. So, I mean, no slouch when it comes to achieving that super slow-mo. Interval shooting, so we can achieve time lapses inside the camera, and vertical video shooting. Now, the RX 100 Mark VII has this as well, and personally, I think this is a bit of an underrated feature. I mean, what this allows you to do is similar to like a smartphone, for example. If you record video in a horizontal orientation and then you turn your phone vertically, then what will happen is the footage will shift in the orientation that the phone has changed to. Well, the ZV-1, if you were to record the footage in a vertical orientation and then shift it horizontally, the metadata is retained, and so the footage will shift automatically. So again, for playing back footage, maybe on Instagram or Facebook or anything like that, where maybe it's got that 1-to-1 ratio, you can really change that framing based on vertical or horizontal, opposed to having any footage that's skewed off at the wrong angle. And let's go into the next slide here. And this one just hits home some of these incredible movie shooting functions the ZV-1 is capable of doing. So we've spoken a little bit about these, which is the 4K movie, and it is powered by the Bionz X image processor. But some of these things as we go on really just kind of is incredibly powerful. So you can display over HDMI and allow for recording.
That's clean HDMI as well, so you can choose to have with or without the camera settings being shown on the other screen. So that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and especially for off-camera recorders or anything like that. Yeah, obviously a really powerful function. It does have this auto power off temperature. So the camera by default is set to standard, but if you want to do particularly long videos, maybe you want to do a continuous shot of up to 10 or even 15 minutes, you can change that tolerance to a high temperature. And by shifting that tolerance, it just means the camera won't automatically turn off as it starts to heat up. There is the file name settings that you can file name to your videos. And then in here, again, this is really where we're talking like serious movie making stuff. I mean, we've already spoken about Gamma, but you can do proxy files. So if you want to edit in lower resolution files to make that post-production workflow a lot easier, you can do proxies. It's got Zebra, as you mentioned, Heath,
time code.
That's right. It's got time codes. It's got record control, which means if you are using a external recorder, you press record on that, it will record inside the camera as well if there's an SD card in there, and as well marker. So you can set up 16:9 or safety markers. So all of this stuff is such powerful video functionality in literally something that fits in the palm of your hand. Like it's just crazy.
There's a quick question as well from Chris Tran, who's asking, is there a time recording limit on the camera?
There is no time recording limit. So, yeah, the battery life is what will come into that. So, yeah, just to clarify for that one, Chris, when we're talking no recording limit, that's just shooting in standard frame rates of 24 frames per second or 25 frames per second. If we're talking about the increased frame rate, the high frame rates of 960 frames per second or 1,000 frames per second, there is a time limit on those ones. We're looking at about 3 seconds in those ones.
Yeah, but for standard shooting, there's no hard limit. You can just keep recording till either the memory card fills up or the battery runs out.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly right. And so what else have we got here? We can extract still images from movies. So if you just want to grab a little still image out from there. What we've already mentioned is the built-in ND filter. And as well, we can set priorities for auto white balancing function. So moving over to the next slide. And this kind of brings us into still images on the ZV-1. So, I mean, I think it's obvious to say that the ZV-1 is an incredibly powerful video camera. and its video functionality is very good, but it still stacks up as a pretty decent still image camera. I mean, it's a 20 megapixel sensor. As we explored before, it does have that RS, so that it's a stacked sensor. Low light performance is fantastic. And is powered by the same processing chip, or rather, it's inspired by the same processing chip that powers the Alpha 9 Mark II. So, I mean, it's no slouch when it comes to its still images.
Yeah, absolutely. And just quickly, mate, Chris, yes, it will power off a USB supply as well.
Fantastic. Yes, I'll bring this one up real quick here. So Chris has asked, will it power off the USB power supply? As Heath has said, yes. Yeah, just power through the micro USB. So let's jump into this next slide in here. So as we keep talking about the still images, we've got 315 phase detect autofocus points and 425 contrast. So that gives us about 65% coverage of the sensor, which is fantastic. I mean, for such a punchy little camera, and you're having 65% coverage, it just means autofocus is going to be tenacious. And on that, we do have, as we mentioned, real-time tracking. So that
also the 24 frames a second as well shooting. So with a 172 shot buffer for JPEGs, and I think it's 85 raw images. That's definitely no slouch when it comes to shooting stills.
Yeah, absolutely. It can really hold up against some of its own. And then the last slide we've tucked in over here goes through some of these we may have mentioned already, but we'll dive into them anyway. So, of course, it has improved customization of the function button. So although the bokeh button and the product showcase mode buttons probably a bit of hotly contested property for those two buttons, already being programmed to those two options. But, if you want to perhaps map the ND filter to one of those shortcut buttons, you certainly can do that through the button customization. The menu screen usability. This is just like a little nice to have feature that we've been adding in a lot of our most recent cameras. If you are navigating the menu setting and you press the delete button, a worded description will come up of what that function does inside the camera.
Yeah, I think that's one of those things that's it's great to point that out to anybody that might be a beginner photographer or beginner videographer, or anyone that's just sort of coming over to the Sony system as well. We know the menus can be a little bit deep sometimes, so it's nice to be able to just have that little help button you can just push to give you a little bit more information about what that feature actually does.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, couldn't agree anymore. We do have the My Menu in there as well, so any shortcuts that you often use, you can slot it into the My Menu area. Group display just means that if you are doing burst shooting in stills photography, it will group all those photos together. So instead of having to go review each one of those burst images individually, it will now just group them together. Similar to the video function in stills, you can name those files as you go through. This one's been repeated. So it's the same.
That's how important it is. That's how good it is. I have to mention it twice.
It's so nice. We had to name it twice. No. So
we forgot to group them.
Yeah, that's funny. And then the last one here, we can rate. So in camera, you can give your images a 1 to 5 star rating. So that way, when you bring them over to your computer and you have any editing to do, or ones that you flagged from earlier are exceptional, then you can just pull them out. So that wraps up that PowerPoint. Look, is there any final thoughts, Heath, you might have on this?
No, there was a quick question from Alex asking if there are any other options about external mics. Chris kind of helped us answer that one by saying you can just put another, it does take other microphones through the microphone input.
Yes.
But yeah, there are other options available, but having the Sony microphone going through the multi-interface shoe does help keep a lot of those external wires around out of the way.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it does have that microphone input on the side, and it does have the hot shoe up the top, so you can get a phantom power supply to go through the hot shoe to power a microphone that might be sitting on the top.
The only thing is that there are some microphones that aren't compatible with that, just due to the battery size of the camera. So you cannot put a microphone that's going to take more power than what the camera can provide.
Yes, good point. I'll just have a quick look on the comments board and see if there was any other questions. I was a bit slack tonight.
I think we got through most of them, yeah.
Good spot. Well, Heath, I mean, is there any closing thoughts you've got on the ZV-1?
I'm just, Chris is just jumping in with a question. Touchscreen. It's got
Please.
touch for focus, Chris.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that can be used in both the stills and the video mode because the ZV-1, similar to, say, the Alpha 61 or, pardon me, not the 61, similar to the 6600 APS-C camera, it does have real-time eye autofocus in movie mode. So the ZV-1 will do eye autofocus in movie, and you can just touch the screen for tracking in that. Any final thoughts, Heath?
I think that's it for me, mate. I think we've covered everything we need to cover. It's obviously it's a new camera that not everyone's had a chance to get in their hands yet, but they are coming. The call-outs are obviously the bokeh switch, the product showcase, and the directional 3-capsule mic on top.
Yeah. Yeah, all of them are huge physical upgrades to the camera. And I mean, like the bokeh switch button and obviously the product showcase mode, two wholly unique features that really came across with the ZV-1. And we're sure our audience and I mean, it's built for them, right?
That's right, mate. Yeah.
All right then. Well,
cool.
I think that wraps it up. So thank you very much for tuning in. We hope you learned a little bit about the ZV-1. Of course, if you have any questions, please get in contact with your local Sony rep and they'll reach out to us and we can send some information down your way. Otherwise, that wraps it up. Thank you very much again for tuning in and we'll see you at the next one. So thanks again.